Have you ever found yourself avoiding an important task, only to spend hours scrolling through social media instead? That report due tomorrow suddenly seems less urgent than organizing your entire digital photo collection. The deadline looms closer, yet you continue to put off, promising yourself you'll start soon, just after one more video, one more article, one more excuse. What if I told you this pattern isn't simply laziness or poor time management, but something far more deeply woven into the fabric of your psychological makeup? The invisible weight of procrastination affects nearly all of us. That silent scream of anxiety grows louder as deadlines approach, yet still we avoid, delay, and postpone. The psychological prison we build for ourselves is walls constructed not of concrete, but of fear, uncertainty, and a complex relationship with time itself. Procrastination is not what you think it is. Procrastination is not laziness. Procrastination is not a character flaw. Procrastination is an emotional regulation problem. Today, we'll journey into the depths of why we put things off, uncover the hidden mechanisms at play in our brains, and explore how ancient wisdom and modern science converge to offer us a path toward liberation from this self-imposed suffering. Have you ever wondered why, despite your best intentions, despite knowing better, you still find yourself delaying important tasks until the very last minute? This question strikes at the heart of what makes us human, our complex relationship with time, pleasure, pain, and our deepest selves. The word procrastination comes from the Latin procrastinare, meaning to put off until tomorrow. But tomorrow never comes, does it? We're caught in an endless cycle of postponement, trapped between what we know we should do and what we actually do. This gap, the psychological abyss, is where the true nature of procrastination resides. When we procrastinate, we're not making a rational time management decision. We're not saying, I'll do this later because later is the optimal time. No, we're saying, I'll do this later because now feels too difficult, too painful, too uncomfortable. At its core, procrastination is about avoiding negative emotions. Dr. Timothy Pychyl, a psychology professor who has dedicated decades to studying procrastination, describes it as a problem of emotional regulation, not a problem of time management. This distinction is crucial. We don't procrastinate because we can't manage our schedules. We procrastinate because we can't manage our feelings. Think about the last time you procrastinated on something important. What emotions were you avoiding? Was it fear of failure? Anxiety about being judged? Uncertainty about how to proceed? Or perhaps the simple discomfort of focusing on a challenging task? The emotional root lies beneath the surface behavior, like an iceberg whose dangerous mass remains invisible beneath the waters. This emotional avoidance creates what psychologists call temporal discounting, our tendency to value immediate rewards over future benefits. Your brain, in its primitive wisdom, prefers the small, immediate pleasure of avoidance over the larger, distant reward of accomplishment. Present emotions trump future consequences. The relief you feel when putting off a task is real but fleeting, while the cost accumulates silently in the background. Procrastination is the gap between intention and action. We intend to act, yet we do not act. This gap reveals something profound about human nature, that we are not always rational actors, that we can desire one thing yet do another, that we contain multitudes and contradictions within us. Carl Jung might view procrastination as a manifestation of our shadow self, those aspects of our personality we prefer not to acknowledge. When we avoid tasks that challenge us, we're often avoiding aspects of ourselves we find difficult to confront. The procrastinator says, I'll do it tomorrow, but the shadow whispers, you're afraid you're not good enough. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Jung famously said, how often have we blamed circumstance, time constraints, or external pressures for our procrastination, when the true director was our unacknowledged fear? The neuroscience of procrastination reveals fascinating insights into our brain's architecture. When faced with challenging tasks, the amygdala, our brain's threat detection system, activates, triggering our fight or flight response. The emotional brain essentially hijacks the rational brain. In neuroimaging studies, researchers have observed increased activity in the limbic system when procrastinators face unpleasant tasks. Meanwhile, the prefrontal cortex, responsible for planning, decision-making, and self-regulation, struggles to assert control. This battle between emotional impulse and rational planning plays out in real time, often without our conscious awareness. The present self prioritizes emotional comfort, while the future self will bear the consequences. Have you ever noticed how your perception of time becomes distorted when you procrastinate? Tasks that might take minutes grow monstrous in imagination. The future self who will handle the postponed task seems almost like a different person. Someone stronger, more disciplined, less emotional than your present self. This temporal disconnect creates what philosophers might call an existential split, a division within the self across time. Friedrich Nietzsche, although he didn't address procrastination directly, would likely view it as a failure of will to power, an inability to assert control over oneself and one's circumstances. He who cannot obey himself will be commanded, Nietzsche warned. Every time we procrastinate, we surrender our autonomy to emotional impulses, becoming commanded rather than commanding. What procrastination isn't merely a personal failing, but a symptom of our modern condition. We live in an age of unprecedented distraction, where the technological environment has evolved faster than our brains can adapt. Social media, smartphones, streaming services, all engineered to capture and hold our attention, create a perfect storm for procrastination-prone mind. The path of least resistance has never been so alluring, so omnipresent, so carefully designed to ensnare us. The dopamine hit from checking notifications provides immediate gratification, while the rewards of focused work are delayed. Our digital environment exploits our brain's ancient reward systems, creating what some researchers call a supernormal stimulus, something more attractive to our instincts than the natural rewards our brains evolved to seek. Procrastination is not experienced equally by everyone. Research shows that certain personality traits correlate strongly with procrastination tendencies. Those high in impulsivity, low in conscientiousness, or who struggle with perfectionism often find themselves particularly vulnerable to procrastination's pull. Perfectionism and procrastination might seem contradictory, but they often dance together in a toxic partnership. The perfectionist fears falling short of impossible standards, so they delay beginning. After all, you can't fail at what you haven't started. This paradoxical relationship reveals how procrastination can sometimes serve as a self-protective mechanism, shielding us from potential failure or judgment. Have you ever noticed how the things you procrastinate on most are often the things most important to your growth and development? This is no coincidence. We avoid what matters most because it matters most, because the stakes feel highest, because the potential for disappointment is greatest. Procrastination is the silent guardian of mediocrity. By avoiding challenging work, we ensure we never rise above our current station, never risk the discomfort of growth, never face the possibility of finding our limits. As the philosopher Seneca warned nearly 2,000 years ago, while we wait for life, life passes. How much life passes while we wait to begin our most meaningful work? The emotional landscape of procrastination reveals fascinating patterns. Research by Dr. Fuchsia Soroy shows that procrastinators experience higher levels of stress, anxiety, and even physical illness compared to non-procrastinators. The very act meant to avoid discomfort ultimately creates more of it, a cruel irony that keeps the cycle spinning. The emotional regulation problem at the heart of procrastination means we're essentially borrowing pleasure from our future selves, taking emotional credit that will come due with interest, present relief at the cost of future suffering. A transaction that, made repeatedly, compounds over time into a substantial debt to ourselves. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. This Chinese proverb cuts to the heart of overcoming procrastination. We cannot reclaim the time lost to delay, but we can choose differently now, in this moment. So, how do we break free from this psychological prison? How do we harmoniously fuse our intention with our action? The first step is self-compassion. Paradoxically, being harsh with yourself about procrastination typically leads to more procrastination, not less. Research by Dr. Kristen Neff shows that self-criticism depletes the same willpower resources needed to overcome procrastination. When you forgive yourself for past procrastination, you actually strengthen your ability to avoid future procrastination. Self-compassion, is not self-indulgence. It's recognizing your humanity, your fallibility, without surrendering to it. As Jung might say, it's embracing your shadow without being consumed by it. The second strategy involves what psychologists call temporal visualization, making your future self more real, more present in your current decision-making. When you vividly imagine the future consequences of procrastination, the stress, the rushed work, the diminished quality, you create an emotional counterweight to the immediate relief of avoidance. Equally powerful is vividly imagining how your future self will feel having completed the task, the pride, the relief, the freedom. By making these future emotions more tangible, you help your present self make decisions that serve your long-term interests. The third approach tackles procrastination at its emotional core. Rather than trying to feel motivated, waiting for some perfect emotional state before beginning, commit to taking action regardless of how you feel. Motivation often follows action, not the other way around. As the writer Mark Manson puts it, action isn't just the effect of motivation, it's also the cause of it. Have you ever noticed how once you finally start a dreaded task, it's rarely as unpleasant as you imagined? The anticipatory anxiety often exceeds the actual discomfort of doing the work. This psychological phenomenon, known as affective forecasting error, consistently leads us to overestimate how bad unpleasant tasks will feel. Breaking tasks into smaller steps, what psychologists call chunking, reduces the emotional barrier to beginning. The mountain becomes a series of manageable hills. Each small completion triggers a dopamine release, creating a reward cycle that can overcome the initial resistance. Environment shapes behavior in ways we often underestimate. Creating spaces free from distractions, using website blockers, or implementing the Pomodoro technique of timed work intervals can bypass the need for heroic willpower. As the psychologist B.J. Fogg notes in his research, make the desired behavior easier to do than not doing it. Tell me in the comments, what environment changes have helped you overcome procrastination? Perhaps the most powerful insight comes from viewing procrastination not merely as a productivity problem, but as an existential one. When we repeatedly avoid difficult but meaningful work, we're not just failing to complete tasks, we're failing to become who we might be. Each instance of procrastination is a small vote for a lesser version of ourselves, a tiny abdication of our potential. The existentialist philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre would recognize procrastination as a form of bad faith, a denial of our freedom and responsibility. When we say, "I couldn't help procrastinating," we deny our agency, pretending we're not choosing when in fact we are. Procrastination is the choice to not choose, a decision to avoid deciding. The truth about procrastination is both challenging and liberating. You are not procrastinating because of some unchangeable aspect of your character. You procrastinate because you're human, with a brain evolved for a different environment, navigating complex emotional currents. And what is chosen can be unchosen. What is learned can be unlearned. Your freedom lies in becoming aware of the invisible forces that drive procrastination. As Viktor Frankl wrote, between stimulus and response, there's a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. Procrastination narrows that space to almost nothing. Awareness expands it. Overcoming procrastination isn't about becoming some productivity machine, ruthlessly efficient and divorced from emotion. It's about alignment, bringing your actions into harmony with your deeper values and intentions. It's about wholeness, integration, becoming undivided against yourself. The journey away from procrastination is not linear. You will have setbacks. You will have days when the old patterns reassert themselves. This is not failure. It's part of the process of rewiring deeply ingrained habits. Each return to awareness, each recognition of the pattern, strengthens your ability to choose differently next time. Procrastination is not who you are. Procrastination is what you do, sometimes in some contexts, for some reasons. The capacity to begin, to persist, to complete is equally yours. The choice between them exists anew in each moment. Your relationship with time, with work, with discomfort can transform. The psychological prison of procrastination has a door, and you hold the key. It doesn't swing open easily or all at once, but with persistent, compassionate effort, it does open. The science of procrastination shows us why we delay. The wisdom of procrastination teaches us how to begin again. In that beginning lies freedom. Freedom from anxiety of avoidance. Freedom for satisfaction of meaningful action. Freedom to become more fully yourself. What will you begin today? Not tomorrow, not when you feel ready, not when conditions are perfect, but today, in this imperfect moment, with whatever resources you currently have. Your future self is watching, waiting, hoping you'll choose to begin. If this exploration of procrastination has resonated with you, share your experiences in the comments below. How has procrastination affected your life? And what strategies have helped you overcome it? Subscribe to continue this journey of understanding human nature in all its complexity, contradiction, and possibility. Remember, awareness is the first step toward change. And change begins not when you feel ready, but when you start despite not feeling ready. Until next time, this is the wisdom of human nature, exploring the depths of what makes us uniquely, complexly, gloriously human.